The barges never docked. They floated like dead weight off the Gulf, corn sweltering in steel hulls as crew radioed for instructions. The ports were full, not with cargo, but with rejection slips. In early July, a Korean feed consortium flagged 3 United States corn shipments as non-compliant. The reason? Glyphosate residues exceeded new thresholds set in their March food safety revision. Within 48 hours, over 2 million tons of Midwest corn were sent back to New Orleans, collapsing million-dollar contracts into unpaid storage bills. At the same time, Prime Minister Mark Carney's trade minister quietly signed a 5-year supply pact with Japan, valued at $1.2 billion, all traced to Manitoba's clean, certified fields. The same ships that rejected Indiana corn were rerouted to load from Vancouver. Washington didn't respond with reform. It responded with tariffs. And the tariffs hit China-built cargo vessels with $1.5 million per trip in new fees, blowing up export costs. United States grain traders reported a 25% cost hike for Gulf-bound shipments. Corn was sitting, not selling, and every hour the price was bleeding. By mid-July, the USDA's export bulletin showed a stunning reversal. For the first time since 1991, Canada's weekly corn exports to Asia surpassed the United States, with Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan citing Canada's non-GMO policy and blockchain verification as key factors. China had already halted all new soybean and corn purchases from United States firms in May, citing geopolitical volatility and trade weaponization risks. Reuters confirmed that multiple Chinese importers labeled Made in USA grain as politically contaminated. Adding injury to insult, Mexico enforced its GMO corn ban on February 15th, permanently removing the United States from its government procurement list. The nation now demands clean, low-carbon, non-GMO grain, a niche Canada exploits with mathematical precision. Meanwhile, pesticide testing costs exploded. The USDA's Directive 9180.40 hiked inspection fees by 40% per sample, making even certified shipments financially brittle. United States grain had to pay more just to prove it could be sold, and often it failed the test. While Iowa farmers postponed harvest to avoid losses, Canadian growers in Ontario and Saskatchewan were booking 2025 harvest slots at a 22% premium. Their corn wasn't just cleaner, it was traceable, audited, and designed for low-emission markets. Export Development Canada provided 50% cost reimbursements for cold chain logistics, ensuring their shipments passed European Union carbon disclosure requirements under RED II, faster than any United States lot could clear customs. Toronto didn't just win new customers. It built trust. Grain Farmers of Ontario's June report showed old crop corn basis at $1.87 above CBOT, while Chicago sat below $3.50 per bushel. That wasn't a price gap, it was a reputational chasm, and Canada didn't lower its price to win. It raised its standards and charged more. In Iowa, the combines stayed parked. Farmers calculated their input costs, $165 per acre in fuel, fertilizer, and seed, and found that selling would mean losing money. According to the USDA, 2.5 billion bushels, over 68 million tons, remained unsold in July, the highest domestic stockpile in 6 years. Meanwhile, the Illinois River choked from low water, forcing barges to run at half capacity and delay Gulf deliveries by up to 15 days. Local economic damage compounded fast. The Indiana Economic Council reported a 6.1% contraction in the first quarter. The Food Bank of Indiana said aid requests had surged 50% year over year, while the state's SNAP cuts could remove 133 million meals from the poor. In Nebraska, ethanol plants slashed capacity. Valero's Columbus plant idled 1.26 billion gallons, laying off 120 workers. Across the Corn Belt, diesel stations ran dry, schools went remote, and co-ops canceled purchases to avoid overflowing silos. This isn't just a market correction, it's a full-scale regime change in agricultural legitimacy. America once defined the rules of food. Now it's failing to meet them. Canada's Prairie Trace blockchain tags every lot from seed to shipment. Each export includes GPS planting coordinates, carbon metrics, and chemical-free certification. uploaded to a public ledger before loading. The South Korea-Canada Organic Equivalency Agreement, signed in March 2025, granted Canada Green Channel access to Korean buyers. Within just 3 weeks, Ontario co-ops locked a 5-year grain contract with a major Asian feed miller. Meanwhile, U.S. exporters struggled to verify grain origins or meet pesticide thresholds. Traders told Bloomberg that their documentation process was, well, pre-digital. The European Commission now clears Canadian corn in 6.5 days on average. U.S. grain takes nearly 4 weeks due to chemical checks and paperwork backlogs. This isn't a tech problem, it's a standard problem. Canada made proof of quality profitable. The U.S. still treats it like a burden. The White House doubled down on tariffs, arguing they'd protect American farms. But in practice, they spooked buyers. Reuters tracked a 14% year-over-year decline in U.S. grain ship bookings out of the Gulf. At the same time, Vancouver terminals saw record volume, driven by returning Asian shipping boxes with discounted backhaul rates. Ironically, the U.S. helped write many of the trade standards on carbon transparency, residue testing, and food traceability that are now being used to exclude its own crops. Canada just followed the rule book and, well, billed extra for doing so. The ripple effects aren't limited to corn. Soybeans, 92% GMO in the U.S., face looming bans from buyers like the EU, who've already scrubbed American beans from low-emission white lists. Biofuel plants are caught in the crossfire. Reduced exports inflate domestic supply, slashing prices and delaying harvest incentives. Yet the ethanol tax credit system remains unchanged, rewarding volume over viability. Even beef isn't safe. Feedlots using U.S. corn now face carbon premiums that Canadian or Australian beef bypass, thanks to their net zero pledges by 2030. This isn't just a market loss, it's a global reputational pivot. The U.S. went from dominant supplier to risky source in under 6 months. The corn crash didn't stop at silos and shipping logs. It seeped into machinery, mortgages, and municipal budgets. In Kansas, combine repossessions surged by 28%, according to Ag Equipment Intelligence. Farm auctions that once sold steel now liquidate families. Tractor manufacturers like Deere & Company report a drop in large ag equipment sales for the second quarter by 17%. Citing credit risk from over-leveraged farmers and an uncertain harvest season. Meanwhile, rural banks are freezing ag loans, warning of a repayment crisis similar to 1984. State budgets, already strained, are watching property tax delinquencies rise across corn-heavy counties. According to the Illinois Comptroller's Office, farmland tax receipts fell 8.4% in the first quarter of 2025, triggering school funding alerts in 14 districts. Rural flight follows money. County assessors in Iowa show a 12% drop in new business filings year to date, while 1 in 6 rural hospitals report revenue loss linked to agricultural decline. It's not just a corn problem, it's a collapse of community capital. Despite mounting evidence, the White House maintains that the fundamentals remain strong. But commodity traders interviewed by the Wall Street Journal say otherwise. We no longer know what U.S. origin means in global pricing, said one analyst. It could be discounted. It could be embargoed. This uncertainty feeds volatility. July's CBOT futures for corn swung 17% in 10 days, driven not by weather or yield, but by perception. Trust has become the most valuable crop, and the U.S. can't harvest it fast enough. Congressional hearings offered no clarity. Competing bills either call for more subsidies or retaliatory tariffs. No legislation addresses blockchain traceability, international residue benchmarks, or carbon scoring, standards already adopted by Canada, Australia, and the European Union. The longer Washington debates, the more exporters defect. 2 major Midwestern grain merchants announced they're relocating inspection offices to Montreal and Vancouver, not for taxes, but for credibility. It was the United States that once led the global push for standardized agri-trade transparency, insisting that importing countries require pesticide logs, soil origin records, and digital shipping trails. Now, those very standards are being used to disqualify U.S. produce. Even worse, Canada's low-emission corn policy was modeled on USDA pilot programs shelved in 2020, according to a leaked policy draft reviewed by Bloomberg. Ottawa didn't innovate. It adopted American ideas that Washington discarded. Canada turned voluntary programs into mandatory laws. They took a blueprint and turned it into leverage. So when Trump rails that Canada is taking our farmers to the cleaners, he's partly correct. But what he misses is this. America handed them the broom. Facing a flood of unsold corn, ethanol seemed like a fallback. But even that market has limits. EIA data shows that biofuel blending mandates have already hit saturation in 17 states. Any increase in production must now be exported. But the same barriers apply: pesticide residues, emissions reporting, traceability. According to the European Union Renewable Energy Directive, any ethanol derived from unverified GMO corn cannot count toward national fuel targets. That disqualifies 90% of current U.S. ethanol. Worse, the added corn supply tanks prices. Local co-ops in Minnesota report ethanol corn bids at $3.28 per bushel, well below break-even, forcing even vertically integrated plants to consider layoffs. America counted on fuel, but without reform, it's just burning stockpiles for scraps. When U.S. corn was dominant, it wasn't just because of volume or yield. It was trusted. Globally. Consistently. Trust is the real export that's vanished. Corn was just the vessel. Today, the world's buyers aren't merely choosing grain. They're choosing risk profiles, climate alliances, and traceable origins. They're choosing geopolitical neutrality. Canada didn't just sell cleaner corn. It sold reliability. It sold certainty. And in a world burning with uncertainty, certainty is priceless. So here's the question that matters. If the U.S. wrote the rulebook and now fails to follow it, can it still claim leadership in global agriculture? Comment below. Should America abandon bulk exports in favor of becoming a certified premium supplier? Because the clock isn't just ticking on corn. It's ticking on the entire brand of American food. And Canada? They already printed next year's label. We're glad you're enjoying this video. Please like and subscribe. Check out another video that is now on your screen.